It is a very, very serious time in this nation. I've been in politics for a very long time, I think before even Nick was born, and I've seen this real transformation happening in America where you're seeing a government being weaponized against its own people and against political opponents. And so I'm going to ask one thing here, and this is pray, pray, and pray. Be strong in your faith, be battle ready, put your armor of God on, and be very active, whether it is in your community, whether it is at a state level, whether it is at a national level. Because we have entered into a very serious period in our history. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I'm hopeful and I have great faith in God that we're going to get through this. But I will tell you, it's going to take all you out there and so many of our people in this great country who love America to stand up and stand up for our freedoms. So I just wanted to introduce with that. I know that sounds a little dire. We'll lighten it up a little bit, but then again, I think the topic is pretty intense too. Why don't Nick, where do you want me to start?
Yes, as you mentioned, it is a very difficult topic to be talking about. And earlier this evening, we showed a video from CPAC this past year with Sarah Carter and Rosie Orozco. And it was the segment where they were showing one of the victims of human trafficking.
Yeah.
I think that was a very hard moment for many people here to see that and to see what is happening as a result of human trafficking.
So first to start, and this has become an issue that's become very personal to myself and to my husband, Matt. We have 5 daughters. They range from the ages of 20 to 11. Our 2 oldest go to University of Notre Dame, go Irish. And I guess there's not many Irish fans here. So for us, they grew up in what would be a stable environment, very centered in our faith, and you kind of are living your life. Yes, they've tried to go after both Matt and I. They've gone after our business. They've gone after CPAC. The left is relentless, but we're very strong through the grace of God. And then from there, we have international events across the globe. I mean, CPAC has been amazing, an incredible experience where not only do we have the conference at CPAC, but then countries from across the globe came to us, like CPAC Hungary. So all the Europeans, conservative Europeans, go to CPAC Hungary. That's in April. Matt and I just came back from CPAC Japan in December, where there's many from the Asian countries coming in talking about the fact that we need a strong America in order for us to stay strong here against real threats there in Japan and North Korea. We've done CPAC Brazil, which we worked closely with the Bolsonaros, CPAC Israel, which was also a very important event, CPAC Australia, and one of the places that we went to was Mexico, CPAC Mexico. And I remember everyone telling me, don't go to Mexico, it's super dangerous, the cartels, you're gonna get killed. And we're like, we're gonna go, we're going. So Matt and I went, we partnered with Viva Mexico movement, which is Eduardo Verástegui, who's in the Sound of Freedom movie, and the producer. And we get to CPAC Mexico, one of the things that they kept talking about was these victims of sex trafficking. So I tell Rosie Orozco, who is a very brave woman, who was a congresswoman in Mexico, who was threatened by the cartels. They were out to kill her because she pushed legislation in Mexico to toughen the penalties against human traffickers. Now she had to leave Mexico and live in the United States because of these death threats that she has received. And Rosie has several homes where there are these victims of sex trafficking. And I said, I want to go meet these girls, meet these boys, because there's boys involved in this too, and I want to learn about this issue. I felt very called. I would say I felt very called by God to go in this direction and learn about this. And we go to the facility, to the home. It's a home. I'll tell you, it needs everything. It is, but you have these girls that range from the ages of 9 to 18. Let me say this again. These are girls who have been abused. The youngest that was in that group was 9 to 18. These are girls that some of them have seen their parents killed, and then they're kidnapped, and then they're raped 4 to 5 times a day. I'm sorry. That is pure satanic, demonic. That is the most disgusting thing I think anyone could ever experience, especially these young children. And with the boys, it was the same thing. So we went to the boys' home. And these homes were very much centered about getting them, they were centered around faith. They were centered around community, like that was their own family there. And they were centered around education, really getting them so that they can get to the university. And then we met some of these girls who were able to graduate from the university and now have careers. One of the places we went to was Chalco, Mexico, where it's 50 nuns, the sisters of the Children of Mary, and they literally, it's like a university campus, and they take 3,000 to 4,000 girls a year. They go into the poorest areas, into the jungles of Latin America and Mexico. They go to these families where they know these girls are at high risk of sex trafficking. They tell the family, we will take these girls, we will give them an education for 4 to 5 years, and then come back. And many of these parents do it because they're living in complete and absolute poverty. And I think for us that we live in this great country, and to know that people are living like this, where they have no opportunity, where they literally sell their children for money in many cases, to the drug cartels, I think it's shocking. And when we went to Chalco, I remember these girls, they were singing and dancing, and we prayed together, and I couldn't help. I called it, my girl said, it's like the gift of tears. I just could not stop crying. I could not stop crying. I could not understand how any human being could hurt these innocent children. How any demonic human being can hurt these children. And so from there, we get back, and we made a commitment with talking to Eduardo Berrastegui, and we said, look, we want to get in the middle of this fight. We want to make these changes, because then I learned that here in America, there are 86,000 children, and I would say now more, who are missing, who have come through the border. We have no idea where they are. No idea where they are. And we know that many of these children are in the hands of human traffickers. And no one has been a voice for them. Our government, shame on them. They have done nothing to try to find these children. There's children coming in where they are flying alone on a plane, and they say, I don't know who I'm meeting. And then they meet a man, and we never see the child again. There are American children also who are being sex trafficked. And we've worked closely with a group down in Tennessee who they save a lot of these children. And so I asked this one guy who does it in law enforcement, he goes, yes, we save the children, but then we have nowhere for them to go. There's not enough places out there for them to go to. Capacity, big problem. How do you help these people recover? And so we ended up going to, so then we decided that we were going to build out the CPAC Center for combating human trafficking. And the craziest thing happened, which is once we launched that, it started taking off. Then we started saying, we can help, let's work on laws, which we'll talk about further, and let's talk about how we can help the victims. Because we can't stay quiet on this. This is not a political issue. This is not a Democrat versus Republican issue. This is an issue of humanity. This is an issue that if we don't save our children, then why are we here on this earth? We can go and live this great life and go and be on social media and don't ever get on TikTok. But you can live this great life and pretend it doesn't exist, but then why are we here? Because that is purely satanical, and we have an obligation to save these children. We have an obligation to stop these human traffickers, these sex traffickers, from preying and physically, emotionally, and sexually abusing these children day in and day out.
And you'd mentioned the movie The Sound of Freedom, which I believe is currently free on Amazon Prime. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would highly recommend that anyone.
How many of y'all have seen Sound of Freedom? Okay, that's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to attend the premiere of Sound of Freedom over the summer with CPAC. So can you tell us about what CPAC's doing to help bring awareness to this issue through the Sound of Freedom premiere and other activities at CPAC?
So Eduardo Verástegui, again, has been a friend of ours for a very long time, big supporter of CPAC. Now he's running for Mexico, for president of Mexico, which is kind of interesting when you have a friend of yours running for president of a country. Which actually, CPAC Mexico, you know who showed up? Was Milei, the current Argentinian president. And we got to meet him. He is, when I say a character, oh my gosh, he is a character. Very charismatic and just a really interesting leader. Good leader, trying to blow things up and not literally blow things up, but just change things up in Argentina. So they came to us, Angel Studios, and they're like, we really want to do this premiere. So we went to the Museum of the Bible, and we had about 500 people show up. And the movie is based on Tim Ballard, who worked at the Department of Homeland Security, ends up leaving when he starts seeing these case after case after case of these child trafficking rings, not enough being done, and so he goes and he's like, I'm gonna go save these children. So he's literally a real hero in our eyes, and he's amazing. His wife is incredible. She's the one that supported him in doing this, in taking on this role of saving thousands of children in Latin America. And then they took this story and they made it into this incredible movie, which Hollywood didn't. It took them. They kept shutting the doors on these guys and saying, no, oh, maybe another year. And finally Angel Studios, through the grace of God, picked up the movie, and it's just one of the highest gross movies that we've seen in a long time, except for the Barbie movie, which I have to say the Barbie movie really stunk. You guys probably didn't go see it, but if the girlfriends would have dragged you there, I would have said, don't go. It was pretty awful. Then, but Sound of Freedom was amazing because I remember people telling me, they're like, I don't really want to go see this movie because it's going to be too painful. And I was like, no. You want to go see this movie because you have to face the reality of what is happening. And in essence, from there, we got to go do the premiere also on Capitol Hill with a lot of members of Congress. Well, guess who showed up? The Republicans. Did any Democrats show up? No. And so this is the biggest issue that we're finding right now with the sex trafficking. Like we established our center for the CPAC Center for Combating Human Trafficking. We literally have done this model before with criminal justice reform, where we have worked with people like Van Jones, for example, and have been able to do incredible work in the space of criminal justice reform. We've done actually a CPAC in a prison in Pennsylvania, in Chester County. And so with that, we wanted to do the same model with the center. Get with the leftist groups. We come in and say, look, this is not a partisan issue. We're going to bring in Republicans. We're going to bring in Democrats. Let's get real legislation done to help the victims and to go after the human traffickers. Guess what? We haven't been able to find any left groups to help us. And so that's been a big challenge, I think, for us. So our director of the center, Frank Russo, he testified in front of Congress. It was at the judiciary, one of the judiciary subcommittees. And one of the things that you learn is that big tech is a big problem that literally facilitates this abuse. So for example, they could be raping children, videotaping these children, and then putting it up on the internet. And if you could be a subscriber and have access to all that. A child, a girl, 11 years old, that's the average age. 11 years old is the average age of a girl that's being sex trafficked. And the big tech companies do nothing. So they can censor conservatives, right? Let me get this right. They can censor people that are MAGA, that they call extremist, but they don't censor this content of sexual abuse of children. And they're making billions of dollars. It is a $1 billion industry, and the US is one, if not the biggest consumer of child trafficking. So we are we're endorsing actually a piece of legislation called the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, which would allow for victims they're being sex trafficked, but let's say they're part of a crime, that they don't get prosecuted for that crime. That if the crime happened, it's less sentencing for that trafficking victim. And we're trying to work to make sure that we can get them so that the victim that there's redemption and there's a second chance for them. One of the things we learned is I went to go visit Letitia's house out in Williamsburg, Virginia, this incredible woman, Elizabeth, who runs this home. And she explained that a sex trafficking victim, if they're caught in a crime, and let's say they're charged with a felony, they can't even become a nail technician, to do your nails. You guys don't have to worry about this. Don't become one of those guys that puts nail polish on. I think it's weird. Then, what I'm saying is that they could work at Five Guys, yes. They can work at a restaurant, yes. They can't even get licensing to do hair or do nails. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So these girls do not have a chance. They fall in this cycle. They don't have a chance for a better life. They just don't. And they fall then a lot of times into drugs if it's not handled correctly, or if they don't stay in the house where they're getting the faith they needed, like the faith, the faith they need, the education they need, the work experience they need. If they don't stay in those facilities, what I would call kind of these recovery homes, these are rehabilitation homes, they go back out there and there's a good chance that they're either going to end up in a life of crime, or they're going to die of drug overdose, or they're going to die of a suicide, because they don't see hope, because there's not, and we've seen that, and sometimes that these girls have left the home, and in the case of Liz, and Elizabeth explained to me, she's lost 2 girls to fentanyl overdose, again, coming through our border, in so many cases, impacting so many of our communities.
Yeah, we only have a couple minutes left, but I did want to thank our attendees who had submitted some questions to you about this issue, and we touched on many of them, but as you just hinted to the border crisis, one specific question was, how has the border crisis impacted human trafficking?
Hugely, hugely, hugely. The drug cartels, the human traffickers, they're the ones that control the border. They're the ones that are, about 1/3 of the girls crossing over the border are being sexually assaulted. 1/3. In many cases, they have abortion pills that they are given as they're coming through the border. I mean, it is insane, the chaos that we're seeing. In many cases, they drop off these children where they don't even check the DNA. They're not checking the DNA of, is this man with this girl or this boy, is that the father of the child? That's not existing. And that was something that President Trump understood. I worked with President Trump at the White House for 2 years, and I worked at his campaign, and we constantly were finding ways to say, okay, we got to confirm that if a child is coming over the border, that the adult is their blood relative, and not lose track of these children on the border. And so it is a huge problem. It is aggravating the situation for human trafficking. I think it's gotten to a point that it's out of control. I think you're seeing a lot of this video footage and the Border Patrol agents saying that, they see these men come, they pick up the children, they put them on the back seat, and they're off. And then we don't see them again. And so this is, I think, one of the biggest tragedies of our lifetime. I really do believe that.
All right, thank you so much, Mercy. We can get a round of applause for Mercy.
Well, come join us February 21st to the 24th if you can. If you've never been, Nick will tell you, it is kind of, and Ryan and these wonderful leaders here for this group, that it is, you get energized and you will leave with hope. As much as things look dire and things are tough right now, I will tell you that there is still hope, and we can do this together. If we come together and know that, America is just, it's too precious, it's too important, and we want to keep it strong and safe and a home for all of our families. And you guys are the next generation. You're it. I want to retire so Nick can take over. And, you're it. You're going to either save America or we're done. Literally, we're done. But I trust in you all and what you're doing. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you, just so much for supporting this group, which I think is so important in all of our college campuses right now to make sure that their voices are continuing to be heard. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.